Hi, I'm Amy.
I'm Laura.
And we are Two
Paper Girls. Today we've got our January wrap up for you. It's pretty long because of this one here.
Sorry.
She read a lot.
I had a spare month of hardly anything apart from exams, which no one revises for. So I just read books. Yeah. So let's go straight into it.
The first book I read in January was Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. This is actually a reread. I read it a few years ago, but it's one of my childhood favourite books. And reading it this time was the most I've ever enjoyed it. It was just so good because it's so magical and just makes me feel all fuzzy inside. But then it's really dark and horrible, and the kids love killing things, and it's pretty like Lord of the Flies as you get older and you read it. And yeah, it was just really, really good. 5 stars definitely. It was just so glad I reread this.
The first book I read in January is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. This book was one of the first books we have to read for studying lit module. And I really enjoyed it. It's a bit long, and towards the end I was like, I need to start wrapping up a bit now, but it's really not what I was expecting. I thought it was going to be dull and not funny, but I did find it funny, and Jane Eyre's a brilliant character, and I like how ugly Mr. Rochester is. He's not your typical attractive protagonist guy.
He's on this cover though.
Well, that's because it's Michael Fassbender.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. They didn't stay true to the book though, did they?
No, never do.
Nah, it's a shame. But Jane Eyre's really good. It gets 4 stars.
The next book I read in February is another reread. It's All My Friends Superheroes. You'll remember that I mentioned this in my January TBR, so I actually stuck to what I was going to say. I read this all in one night in a bath and then the aftermath of the bath.
That's the best way to read that book.
And it was so good. Again, I think I enjoyed this more than the first time just because, I don't know, I did love it the first time, but I'd forgotten so much about it, so it felt like reading it for the first time. And all the characters are so clever. And I don't think I understood the ending properly the first time, that she... Wait, no, I don't want to ruin it. But when I read it this time, it made me cry, because I was like, oh, that's so perfect. And yeah, it's really, really good. 5 stars.
The next book I read in January was The Daylight in the Dust, a collection of short stories by Janet Frame. I read this book because I thought it had something to do with my creative writing, but it actually didn't really. But I thought short stories would be a good little break from all the books. And it was pretty good. Some of them were really good. One was called Bath, and it made me cry, and it was really good. And some of them were just weird, and I didn't get them at all. And it was too messagey and not enough plot in the short story. But altogether, I think the collection was really good, and it gets 3 stars.
The next book that me and Amy both read this month was Oedipus by, I don't know how to say his name, Sophocles?
Sophocles.
I don't know how to say it.
Sophocles.
That's it, yeah. This is, you may already be able to sort of know the storyline of this because of the Oedipus theory by Freud. But yeah, it's a guy who gets in a predicament because he's killing people and he doesn't realise who he's killing and marrying, and it's all very confusing. I enjoyed this so much more than I thought I would. I read the first few pages and it was really dragging on, and I thought, oh god, because we had to read Medea last term and I didn't really enjoy reading that, but I loved seeing it. But actually this has so many twists and turns. I was really surprised and I really enjoyed it. I'll probably give it 4 stars.
I didn't enjoy it as much as Medea. I think we're opposites.
Yeah.
I prefer Medea to this one. I think it's just because the way it's written. I didn't like the character of Oedipus as much as Medea, because she was so much more dramatic.
He's a badass.
Yeah, he has his dramatic moments, but I prefer Medea. But for me, Oedipus gets 3 stars. The 4th book I read in January was I Am the Messenger by Marcus Zusak. He is such a fabulous author. Since reading the book for you, I wanted to read this, and this was fab. It gets 5 stars because it was just perfect from start to finish. It's so good. It's so good. I did a review of it if you want to hear more of it, and I will link it down below as soon as I make it available.
The next book that we both read for our course is William Blake's Songs of Innocence and of Experience. This was actually the last book I read this month. I read 4 books because I failed to read Jane Eyre in January, but February, it'll probably even be my first book of February, but I didn't want to lie in this wrap up. But yeah, this book was, I don't know, I thought I was enjoying it, but then the more you read, they got so repetitive and samey, and I liked having the pictures in this edition to go along with the poems, which was how he intended them to be read. But yeah, it was a bit, the experience side of it was so much better than the Innocence part, because they were just too bleh.
I couldn't stand it. I read the first couple from Innocence, and I thought, this is just saying, it's like a kid has written a rhymey poem that has the same rhythm over and over again and talks about Jesus and lambs. And then it gets better, like with the more you study it.
Yeah.
Now I've had to compare Innocence and Experience. I'm like, oh, okay, he was smart.
Yeah. Reading
them is just not very good, and it gets 2 stars from me.
Yeah, our friend said that he was like a brony, that he would have been a brony if he was about now, which is kind of true. I think I'd give this 3 stars.
The next book I read in January is The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. This was a reread. I don't really know why, I just thought I would just reread it again.
Yeah, I was surprised. You just messaged me like, oh, I'm reading Catcher in the Rye, and I was like, oh, okay.
I don't know, I just think it was very dreary outside. And I wanted like a read of like nostalgia, but a bit of like advice really. Like coming back to uni in the dark and the cold.
And all the ducks have flown away from the pond, and we don't know where they've gone.
I was feeling like I needed some knowledge. So I picked this up, and it annoyed me more than the second time. I think I've read this 3 times now. But the second time I read it, it was really good. And this time it just really annoyed me.
Yeah.
He's so annoying. So annoying. And it's gone down in stars. It was 5 and now it's a 4. What a shame.
Like I said, I've talked about all the 4 books I read this month. But I'm going to mention Name of the Wind because if you saw our January TBI, you remember I was really excited to read this. But as you can tell from my bookmark, I didn't do too well. This is still something I really want to read. It's just huge, and there's so much pressure to stay on top of things this term with uni, and I'm not sure when I'll read this, but the 30 pages I read I really liked, so I am looking forward to reading this, but I thought I'd mention why I didn't get around to it.
The next book I read in January was The Humans by Matt Haig. This book was brilliant. It gets 5 stars. I am going to do a review about it, so when I do that I will link it down below. This book is fabulous, and I just can't get over how good this was.
I was so surprised because I've heard of this book and I read the blurb and it didn't really interest me, but since Amy talking about it, I really want to read it.
It's brilliant. It's like a weird contemporary. It's just fabulous, and you should definitely read it. It's really quick as well. I read it in like 2 days.
And for the rest of this video, I'm just going to sit here and look at Amy.
So this one, I am going to use my lovely assistant. It's so damn heavy. And I'm not going to say it's a book because it's a graphic novel of The Walking Dead, and it's Compendium 1. And I said when I got it in our Christmas winter book haul that I was going to gradually read it. And I was going to update you, and every time I finished a chapter, it was really good. So I just read all of it in one go. It was the best thing ever. Thank you to my boyfriend Rory for buying it for me. It's the best thing in the world. And it definitely gets 5 stars, and my birthday's coming up, so if you want to get me Compendium 2, that'd be much appreciated. The penultimate book that I read in January was Robert Browning's Selected Poetry. We have to read this for our Study and Lit module. We're studying the dramatic monologues such as Filippo Lippi and My Last Duchess and Caliban upon Sebatos, which is about the Tempest. And they were the best ones out of this entire collection. They were, like, the dramatic monologues were really good. The other poems were long and a bit dull in places, but it was better than Blake, so it gets 4 stars.
And Robert Browning's a sexy beast.
Yeah, look at him. Wow, I'm quite impressed. So yeah, Robert Browning was pretty good. I'm looking forward to studying this. And the last and 10th book I read in January, I reached the holy grail of BookTube month. Okay, was 100 Sideways Miles by Andrew Smith. It was fabulous, this book. As you can see, it's got a lovely falling dead horse on it. I won't tell you why that is. You have to find out for yourself because I've obviously got you intrigued there. But it's about a guy called Finn, and he thinks he's trapped in his father's book. He sees the world in distance instead of time, and this is really interesting because we do go around the sun at 20 miles per second, and every second he says we've travelled 20 miles instead of saying he's travelled a second. And I just think that's really cool.
Yeah,
and this book's so good. It's so good, and it's so quick as well, and it gets 5 stars. I'm liberal with my 5 stars lately, but it gets 5 stars.
That is it for our January wrap-up. We hope that you enjoyed finding out about all the many, many books that Amy read and the couple that I read. I read 4, which is good for me. I'm quite happy with that.
In a month, that's like one a week.
Tiny. But yeah, we hope that you enjoyed this video, and soon we're going to be doing our February TBRs.
Let us know what books you read in January. I'd love to know. Comment and subscribe if you like this video, and we'll see you on the next video, guys. Bye.
Yodel. sure.
Stop revving!
Yodel. Like, dribbling on. But then, dribbling, that's a really weird word to say.
Jesus.
Do you want to help?
Yeah.